try to find your own carpus. It's right above the wrist, actually, where your um, forearm bones, specifically the radius, meet the carpus is your wrist. So if you go right above there, you should find a lump of bone that moves when you move your hand. But when you move your fingers, it more or less stays in the same place. That's your carpus. And it's like kind of at the bottom of your hand, right above the wrist. And it's important to identify the carpus because this is where the rays come from. So the rays radiate out from the carpus. Then we have the metacarpals. This is your palm. So right here, that's your palm, which is made up of the metacarpals. And these joints here are your knuckles. And metacarpals are pretty easy to find. If you just go from your knuckle down, that's your metacarpal. One thing that can get confusing, I don't know how well you can see my hand here, but there's these lines, especially when you flex your fingers or extend your fingers outwards on the back of your hand. These seem like they might be metacarpals, but they're actually tendons. We'll get into those in a bit. But there's a couple things to note. For a thing that has so many possible shapes and gestures, I always manage to find the wrong ones when I draw them. Yeah, yeah. And that's part of the problem, is because there's so much you can do with the hand, it's so easy to put it in a weird position that doesn't look very good, even if it's correct. So a couple things to note about the metacarpals. Um, First is that they're not parallel. They're actually radiating out. This is true of all the rays in their entirety. Um, Pretty common thing I see in hands, and it makes sense why people would think that way, is that they draw everything is like nice and straight and parallel. So it's a box, and then the fingers are straight they come out from that box. But that's not how they actually look if you study. So instead, you have the carpus, and then the rays radiate out, starting with the metacarpals. And then, of course, the thumb, too. That's a metacarpal as well. The other thing to note about the metacarpals is their, or another thing to note is their relative proportions. So the middle, if I draw a line straight through, you see that the middle actually is the farthest out. Then the ones next to it are the second farthest out. Um, they're usually about the same. One might be a bit longer than the other, depending. That changes individually. Some people's first finger is longer. Some people's third finger is longer. Um, and then the little finger on the end, that's the small one. We all know that. Um, so again, it's not a straight box when we're drawing the hand. It radiates out and up. And the last thing I want to talk about when it comes to metacarpals is how they move. So again, you're gonna have to reference your own hand here. Um, the um, the index finger and the middle finger, these metacarpals, these pretty much don't move. They have a little bit of give to them if you like push them, but if you try to move them on your own, they're not going anywhere. They're fixed in with tendons. The first metacarpal, also known as the thumb, this one moves a lot. This has this joint right here that allows it to to go back and forth over the palm, away from the palm, up to the side and off to the side. And then the third and fourth, these move a little bit. It's easy to miss this, but if you look closely, follow the edge of my knuckles. Right now they're straight, and then I can bring them in towards my palm. So try this for yourself. Grab your outer fingers and move them around a little bit at the knuckle. So what this allows us to do is when we're wrapping our hand around something, it actually wraps around a little bit because the outsides go in. But if you want to press your hand flat, you can do that as well. So that's the metacarpals. And then the phalanges are the finger bones. These are pretty straightforward. Hi, Fust. These just little bones. They bend. They follow the same angle as the metacarpals. It is worth noting that they face slightly inwards towards the palm. So if you look at your hand, you'll notice that the tops of your fingers, if I simplify them down into boxes, so the middle, they curve in just a little bit in the direction they're facing instead of being four straight boxes. But besides that, this is pretty straightforward. Their phalangeal metacarpal joint, these ones have, they're mostly just flexion and extension. They go down, they go up, but they also have a little bit of waggle to them. Let you move your fingers from side to side like this, but not that much. So if, how much can you get your raise away from the angle of the overall hand? Not that much. More so on the little finger, but for the most part, they don't, especially the middle, doesn't move that much. Hi, Oprah June. Welcome. The interphalangeal joints, also known as your finger joints, these move one direction. They go down or back up. Some people can bend them backwards like that, and they have a little bit of a passive bend backwards. So if you press your finger down on something, you can bend them back, but I can't do that myself. I have to do it by pressing it against it. So that's the fingers. That's how they move. So any thoughts or questions about all that? That was a lot of information all at once, I know. And all of it is in my book, so if you want to review it, and this class will be recorded as well, so you can always review it later. It's important to learn how to draw the bones. I agree. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I think that is actually a very good study method. And I'll do a demo if we have time of an écorché of the hand where you draw the bones. Stream stuck. Is anybody else? I'm drawing lines here. Okay, stuck. Shit. All right. Let me. Can you hear me? How about on YouTube? Can you see or hear me? Um, can you see or hear me now? It's back. Okay, cool. All right. Well, that was easy. Um, yeah, a really great way to study this stuff is to draw the bones. Um, I like to use 3D models when I'm studying anatomy because you can draw them from a bunch of different angles. And when I draw the bones, I don't want to, there's a lot of detail in these bones, like the metacarpals interact with the carpus and such does not matter. You can't see it at the surface. Don't worry about it. The only one that does matter is the thumb and the first metacarpal, because if you look at the carpus, it's got this like little kind of saddle shape off to the side. And this is actually called a saddle joint. So the bottom of the metacarpal looks like this, and the one on the carpus looks like that, and that's why it can go back and forth and side to side. But yeah, good practice is getting one of these 3D models and just drawing some bones. But I would always, oh, that's a terrible one. I would always, sometimes it's hard to draw and talk at the same time. I would always start kind of abstractly with like a gesture and then add the details of the bones. So, and then we have the carpus. And I like to simplify the carpus, the carpals, and the phalanges into oh, we're stuck again? Ah, okay. We back? That's all I did before was yeah, all I did before was turn on off the camera and turn it back on. Hopefully I don't have to keep doing that. I like to simplify the metacarpals and phalanges into there's like a rounded base that fits over the one before it, and then it has a rounded head and then a shaft. That's functionally enough the same. So draw those guys in there. And yeah, the phalanges get smaller as they go up. I didn't mention that because I mean you guys have hands. I think we've all noticed that. But I don't want to spend too long on this because I want to get to more interesting stuff. Wait, missed the middle one. That's got to be the longest. Oh, another thing to note about the hands is that the proportions should be palm and fingers are about the same, but not always exact. Just get you in the ballpark. But yeah, practicing the bones, good practice. Um, so let's talk about the muscles. And the muscles of the hand, for the most part, you don't really need to worry about them. They're small. You can't really see them from the surface, except for a few. And I realized I should have I have the back of the hand here. I need the front of the hand. Okay, give me 1 second. Let me get my front of the hand because a lot of them are better seen from the front. Uh, Oh, I didn't want to open Photoshop. Damn it. Okay, get out of here, Photoshop. Okay. So on the front of the hand, we have a group of muscles here called the hypothenar eminence and a group of muscles here called the thenar eminence. And there's actually like three muscles in each of them, but you can't see the definition, so it doesn't matter. Um, but you can see them if you look at your hand. That's the thenar eminence, this kind of lump right here, and the hypothenar eminence on the other side. Then you have what are called interosseous between each phalanx, or sorry, each ray. But for the most part, you don't see them. The one you do see is the first interosseous that attaches to the metacarpal of the thumb and the index finger, and that creates this little bulge here. If you look at the side of your index finger, there's a muscle there. You can see it better from the back. That's right there. And you do see these. These are worth knowing. But it's in the front, it's covered mostly by muscles here. They're called the transverse something. Honestly, don't have all of the names of these memorized. You don't need to know the names. You just need to know where they attach. It's in the book if you want to look it up. But that attaches to the top of the thumb metacarpal and to the palm. And you can see that one right here, especially when you flex it and pull in the hand right there. And these aren't super noticeable, but it's worth being aware of them when you're drawing because once you learn to identify them, you'll start to spot them. The other thing about the soft tissue of the hand is we have fat pads, and they're on the palm. So you got one here. Basically, these show up where you grip things. They'll just help you grip things, keeping it soft. You got one there, one over the hypothenar eminence, and one over the bottom of the palm, and the thenar eminence. So, and additionally, you got ones beneath each finger. So if you see a handprint, this is essentially what you're seeing is the fat pad. So if I draw all of these fat pads that make our fingers nice and round, there's one missing here. I mean, I shouldn't say missing like it belongs there, but it's the only phalange that doesn't have a fat pad right there. And then if I get rid of the bones underneath, you can see that the fat pads are basically your handprint. So that's where those are. And you can find folds in between them. Like folds vary where they are between individuals, like palm readers would look at the variation, but they're in line with the fat pad. So you'd have a wrinkle here, a wrinkle here, and then wrinkles here. And then some people have other ones in other places too. So that's all the stuff that hands are made out of. Um, any questions before we start doing some studies of that? Okay, so I'm going to do an exercise called an écorché, which is where you draw a figure, or in this case, a body part, as if it has no skin, so you can see all of the underlying anatomy. Oh, actually, there is one thing I neglected to mention now that I'm looking at the hand. Let me bring back my back of the hand. And I did touch on this, but just to reiterate that the lines on the back of your hand are tendons. So these go they go all the way up the finger, but you can only see them up to the knuckle that go past your wrist to muscles in your forearms. So I had that hand. Okay. So one thing you can do when you're doing an écorché, and I'm not going to do this too much, but you can actually draw, if you're doing this from a photo, you can actually draw right over the photo to identify the bones and muscles. But in this case, I'm not going to do that. Or, yeah, maybe I should do that. I don't know. Let's see. So I'm going to start just kind of like just an overall gesture, so I don't have to worry about the proportions and identifying the anatomy at the same time. Just to kind of make my life a little bit easier, focusing on one thing at a time. But I'm not super worried about the proportions right now. I'm mostly interested in identifying the anatomical features and drawing them. So right here, and I guess I will draw over it, I can see the carpus that kind of like a little bit higher up. But that like rounded bump on the bottom of the hand is the carpus. So we start an écorché by finding the visible bone landmarks, and on the hand there's lots of them. So I have the carpus, I have the knuckles, which are the heads of the metacarpals, and then the knuckles are pretty easy to spot on the hands, and that's enough information for me to find the rest of it. So I'll start with the carpus, and then I have the rays. So the metacarpals, those go up to the knuckle, and I draw those kind of like these heads, or the rounded head, and the base. Rounded head, base. And then we actually can't see the connection between the carpus and the thumb metacarpal. It's blocked behind stuff mostly, so. And note that it's at a different angle compared to the rest of them. You know, you have thumbs. You know that they're at a different angle. Now add in the fingers, which is pretty straightforward. Just put the knuckles on here. And how they attach. And I'm noting like this one, it's facing in a bit. They're not perfectly parallel in their angle. And then the little bone on top, I think I made that too big. the distal phalanx, as they're called. And this one, a bit more straight. A little bit bigger, I think. And then remembering that the middle phalanx, the middle ray, I should say, is the longest. And note the change of angle. This one is facing in a little bit. This one is facing out a little bit. It's not a huge change of angle, but it's enough that if you get it right, it just makes a hand that much more believable. And then the thumb, which has only two phalanx, but they're bigger. And there we go. There's the bones. So we'll add the soft tissue next. So I can see those tendons right here. And there's one that goes up to the thumb as well. So I can draw those in. And those actually go down the fingers as well, if I could keep following them. But you don't see them once they get past the knuckle, so not really much of a point worrying about them. And the only muscles we can see from this angle, we can see a little bit of the hypophanar eminence, though that might just be the fat pad. It really doesn't matter. It's a bulge on the side, and I can see it. So I'll draw that in there. And right here is that interossus, the first dorsal interossus, that little triangle. Really easy to miss if you don't know to look for it. That goes there. And then there's that transverse muscle. You can't see a lot of it. And then this one little part of skin. So add that in as well, and then I can see the fat pads of the fat pad of the thumb, and like a little bit of the other fat pads there. One thing to note is that the fat pads of the palm, they actually go out beyond the knuckles, which is why the fingers look longer. Your fingers look longer on the back than in the front. And the webbing between your fingers actually overlaps that fat pad. So this webbing here, the fat pad is here past the knuckle. Tendons and metacarpals look similar. How are they different? Well, they're made of different stuff. That's the biggest thing. You don't actually see the body of the metacarpals at the skin level, except for maybe this one here. You only really see their knuckle at skin level, and then the tendons are smaller, they go on top, and they move. So when you flex, I don't know how visible this is on the camera, but when you try this with your own hand, when you extend your fingers, so pulling them away from your palm, you can see that the tendons pop out more because they're pulling the fingers back. So they move in a way that the metacarpals don't. Hey, thank you for your classes and have a nice stream. Thank you. So based on this écorché, I'm going to do a sketch of the hand. I should not have done that on the same layer. Um, so I'll take these and move them out of the way. So when I sketch the hand, I want to be aware of all of these different little things that, all these different anatomical features. We can get all of them on the screen. There we go. So I'm going to start.
Um,
Yep, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, well, I was to say that usually I like my two main struggles are the thumb position, right? That this exercise with the bones is going to help a lot, but also with the tips of the fingers, because depending on the angle, they have like, with the nail that it's the flat on top and all this. Yeah, usually I struggle to find the right shape for the tip of the fingers. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, or they end up too round and they look like sausages, or they get too sharp and they look like claws. I struggle a lot to find the balance.
Yeah. I can't give you a complete answer for that because I think the tips of the fingers is where you have the most opportunity for style in the hand. Personally, I like to make them a little bit flatter. Even flatter than I see them. I just think that looks better. But yeah, I think if you
Hmm.
make them too round, they do get kind of sausagey. But some people might
Yeah.
prefer that because it makes them look kind of soft. Like cartoon characters have like very round
Hmm.
fingers sometimes. Like, I mean, I'm exaggerating there, but
Yeah.
so that's the general proportions. I think make it a little bit longer. It's kind of running out of room. And I put the thumb. I drew the thumb a little bit high. Let's shift that down. Make sure I capture that space that's there, and this isn't going quite as out as I drew it. And now I will add the details as I see them. So I'm going to include that hard edge of the metacarpal here that I saw. I like the way that looked. Suggest the knuckles have that little skin fold there that you see on top of knuckles. And if you look at the fingernails, you can really see how the fingers do like slightly rotate to face the palm. But I'm finding the metacarpals, the head of them at the knuckle, and the tendon, which kind of disappears, at least in this photo. I find if you draw those tendons like all the way down, it starts to look very, um, what's the word? Like old and like kind of claw-like. It's like villain fingers. Or like making them really strong. But yeah, it depends how you do it. Like if you make the fingers thicker, they looks like somebody who has really strong hands. And then the tendons make them look strong. If you make them thin, it's like old people with like the gaunt claw hands. Don't forget about the skin. Then I am going to give a little bit of definition to that dorsal interosseous there, that little triangle muscle. And the skin. I usually am not actually this detailed, but because I explained all this anatomy stuff, I probably should show it. And then there's the other end of the carpus as it attaches to the wrist. That little bump there, right here, that is the ulna, a muscle of the bone of the forearm. And then there's a tendon that's going up to the knuckle here. And you actually see this line there. That's the tendon as well on the back of the thumb. Which you don't see most of the time, but if you're pulling the thumb back like this, that tendon pops out. And there we go. Another one for my challenge. Any thoughts or questions before we get into the last little bit? Okay. So the last thing I want to talk about is an approach to, or not an approach, but like some tips as far as how to do gesture of the hand. Because you can get the hand anatomically correct and still have it look weird because it's not in a position that people ever hold their hands, or it just doesn't look good compositionally. So I don't know how you ask it, but I think I found it out in training. Okay, sorry, I didn't really understand that, but I'm gonna keep going. One thing that I find very useful when drawing hands is not to think about every finger, but to kind of think of their overall shape and to remember that hands, like we talked about, how they're not, it's not this, it's this, and to look for that shape. So these ones are a very nice example of that. how you have that shape for the palm, and then the fingers all kind of come together like this towards each other in a nice flowing shape. Same thing on this side. And it's also just like a visually, at least to me, this is a visually more, um, what's the word? Like just a visually more interesting, a visually more appealing shape than the like box hand. Um, the other thing to note about hands when you're drawing hands is it's more visually interesting and more accurate to how hands generally are to have a variation in the angle of the fingers. Like if you notice here, this one, they're all at like slightly different angles going towards it. That's how they get to that tip here. So when you're drawing hands, something like this, where they're all at slightly different angles, is it's more natural, but it's also much more visually interesting than having them all just be parallel. At least I think it's more interesting. And this is especially noticeable when the hand is grabbing something, or in a knuckle. So this is what I was talking about. How the metacarpals, you can pull them inwards towards the palm, so you can see that they're like really curved in. And then the fingers are all at slightly different angles as well. So drawing the fist like this with the fingers at different angles and the knuckles curving inward is going to be more natural than having the knuckles in the straight line and all of the fingers at the same angle. It's more visually interesting and it's more accurate. Um, yeah, you see it here as well. Where the angles are slightly different. The knuckles are brought in or brought lower. These two are the same angle, but the ones on the outside are different. So I'll do one more demo of a hand real quick. I'm going to do this one just from imagination to kind of show you what I mean by starting with that larger gesture. Man, I hope this one works out. Doing something on stream from imagination without any rehearsal is tricky. But I'm starting with that shape, keeping in mind that the knuckles come, that they're not perfectly straight, that the middle one comes up, and I'm having the angles of the fingers change a little bit every time. And let's throw in a thumb as well. So that's going to be at an oblique angle to the rest of it. And maybe I'm going to have it not quite come up so much. So there's the gesture. Knock it down to put the detail on top of it. Probably should start with this finger because this is the one that's going to overlap the others. And curve it a little bit more towards the palm. That might be a little much. And then the hypothenar eminence, can kind of see that coming out the side, or maybe the fat pad, whichever that is. This one looks a little too wide. Now remember, there's this little triangle here, that little triangular muscle. I'll just hint at it a little bit because it's not super noticeable. And I think I should see a little bit of the back of the thumb from this angle. And the metacarpal knuckle there. I think that's all right. Not the best hand I've ever drawn, but it illustrates the points that I was trying to make of angling the fingers.
It's a good hand.
Thank you.
It's a really good hand.
Number 22. Now I'm caught up in the challenge. And then real quick, another thing that I like to do when I'm gesturing the hand is like unifying the fingers in a shape, then having like one of them break away. Just that can make it a bit more interesting as well. So if I bring this one out, sometimes it works better than others, but just having that little added bit of variety can help too. Okay, so I gotta wrap this up, but real quick, does anybody have any questions or thoughts to add?
No, I think I just realized I have weird hands because my middle knuckle doesn't go up.
Oh, that's strange.
Yeah, I would send a picture and everything. Look,
It does go
like
up.
this, it's the same level. Like the finger is longer, but the knuckle itself is at the same level.
No, that's I see it. I can see it being higher than the others. Um, anyway, um, your hands aren't that weird. I think I need to pull this in a little bit. Probably shouldn't have kept messing with this. I think it was okay, and then I I don't know, whatever. It's a study, and I do have to wrap this. So thanks everybody for coming out. Just to do all the promo and stuff, we do these every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, which is -8 UTC. If you have not joined the Discord, we'd love to have you. That way you can join in the Discord and talk on the mic instead of just typing in the chat if that's something you're into. It's also very nice to join the Discord because we have a really great community now of people who are serious about learning, and it's contagious. You see them doing the work and getting better, and that makes you want to as well, which is exciting. So I'd love to have you for that. There is a free textbook. Link is in the description, and you can find it on the Discord. Would love to have you check that one out and share that with all your friends. We have a free drawing course as well that's based on the first chapter of the book that is intended to help you develop good study habits so you can study on your own in an effective way that keeps you getting better and better. And if you really want to get better fast, and or if you like to have that direct class-like structure, then you can sign up for a mentorship with me, and we'll work together one-on-one. I'll review your work and give you assignments to keep you improving. And, you know, it's like, it's personalized. We go at your pace and address your needs. So you don't have to, it takes a lot of the guesswork out of learning to draw, instead of having to figure out what you need to do to get better from like the endless rabbit hole of art advice online that often contradicts. You can have somebody who's taught other people before tell you what you need to do to get better. Yeah, thanks again, everybody, for coming out, and hopefully I will see you in the next one. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.